Hey everyone. Ever stop and wonder how your body gets rid of old, damaged, or just plain unnecessary cells without causing a huge, messy scene? Well, it's not some chaotic collapse. It's actually a perfectly orchestrated, incredibly precise event. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the body's own controlled demolition process, a fascinating little thing called apoptosis. So, here's the game plan for our journey. First, we're going to get a really clear picture of what this tidy programmed death is all about. Then we'll tackle a really important question. Is this process a friend or a foe? From there, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, how a cell even gets its demolition orders, how the great dismantling actually happens, and finally, how the whole site gets cleaned up without leaving a trace. Now, to really understand what apoptosis is, it helps to first see what it's not. On one side, you've got necrosis. Think of this as a chaotic collapse. It's accidental, it's messy, the cell basically bursts and spills its guts everywhere, causing a big inflammatory mess. But on the other side, you have apoptosis. This is our controlled demolition. It's programmed, it's clean, and its whole purpose is to prevent inflammation. It's literally the difference between a building crumbling in an earthquake versus being brought down by a team of demolition experts. All right, let's start with the basics. Section 1. What exactly do we mean when we say a tidy, programmed death? Let's get a clear definition. Okay, so here it is. Apoptosis. At its very core, it's an incredibly organized sequence of events. The two keywords here are programmed and coordinated. The cell isn't just a passive victim here. Nope, it's actively following a precise internal blueprint for its own disassembly, making sure that everything is contained, clean, and super efficient so it doesn't hurt any of its neighbors. So this all sounds very neat, but is it actually a good thing for us? Is apoptosis our friend or is it our foe? Well, as we're about to find out, the answer is, fascinatingly, both. On the one hand, apoptosis is an absolute hero. It's the process that sculpts our fingers and toes in the womb by getting rid of the webbing between them. It's our body's personal quality control system, constantly eliminating old, worn-out cells. And maybe most importantly, it's one of our primary defenses against cancer. In fact, a hallmark of a cancer cell is that it's figured out how to ignore these self-destruct signals. But when apoptosis goes haywire in the other direction, when it's too active, it's linked to some really serious neurodegenerative diseases like Huntington's and Parkinson's. So the big takeaway here? Context is everything. It's all about the right amount, at the right time, in the right place. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics. How does a cell even know it's time to go? Well, it all kicks off when it receives that fateful message, the death signal. The whole process really breaks down into two main stages. First up, you've got the initiation phase. This is where the big decision is made. Think of it as the moment the demolition project gets the final green light. After that comes the execution phase, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's when the cell actually carries out the demolition plan. So, who are the workers on this demolition site? Meet the caspases. These guys are the demolition crew. They're a special family of enzymes, and you can think of them in two groups. You have the initiator caspases. They're like the foremen who get the orders and kick things off. Then they activate the effector caspases. That's the crew with the sledgehammers that does all the heavy lifting of taking the cell apart. So how does that decision get made in the first place? Well, there are three main ways a cell can get the order to initiate apoptosis. There's the inside job, which we call the intrinsic pathway. There's the outside order, or the extrinsic pathway. And then there's a direct attack, known as the perforin-granzyme pathway. First up, the inside job. This happens when the cell's own internal surveillance system detects a huge problem, like maybe its DNA is damaged beyond repair. It basically sounds an internal alarm. This alarm triggers the cell's power plants, the mitochondria, to start leaking a very specific protein. Once that protein is out, it assembles this self-destruct platform that activates our first caspase foreman, and boom, the demolition has officially begun. Next up is the outside order. In this case, the command comes from another cell, usually an immune cell. Think of it like a cop showing up at the door with a warrant. The immune cell presents a special molecule to a death receptor on the target cell's surface. That connection is the signal. It causes all these receptors to cluster together, which builds a signaling complex that activates the demolition. But this time, the call is coming from outside the house. And finally, we've got the direct attack. This is the immune system's no-nonsense, brute force method. A special T cell comes along and literally punches holes in the target cell's membrane. Then, through those holes, it injects the demolition enzymes directly.
It completely bypasses all the early warning signals and just gets straight to the point. It's swift, it's direct, and it's a super effective way to eliminate a threat.
So it doesn't matter if the order came from the inside, the outside, or a direct attack. The result is the same. An initiator caspase is now active, and that means we are now entering the execution phase, the great dismantling.
This is where the real action happens. Those initiator caspases, the foremen, go and activate the effector caspases, our demolition crew, and they just go to town. They start breaking down the cell's internal scaffolding, its cytoskeleton. At the exact same time, other enzymes get switched on, and their job is to chop up all the DNA into these neat, uniform little fragments. You can actually see the cells start to shrink and bubble up at the surface, forming these little pockets called blebs. And this part right here is just brilliant. It really shows you how elegant this whole process is. The cell doesn't just explode. Instead, it carefully packages up all of its dismantled contents into these small, membrane-wrapped parcels called apoptotic bodies. This is the absolute key to preventing that inflammation we talked about. All the potentially dangerous stuff from inside the cell is safely contained in these little biological trash bags. Okay, so the demolition is complete, the building is down, and the debris is all neatly packaged, but it's still on site. So for our final section, how does the body call in the cleanup crew?
So how does a dying cell signal for its own garbage pickup? This is where it gets really, really clever. As our source material so perfectly puts it, the apoptotic bodies basically present a tasty morsel for the scavenger cells of the body. They do this by flipping a specific molecule that's normally hidden on the inside of their membrane to the outside. It's a literal eat-me signal.
And that's not the only thing on the menu. The apoptotic bodies also put out a few other molecules and can even get tagged by things like antibodies. All of these different signals act like little flags, basically screaming to the body's professional eaters, hey, over here, free lunch. And who are these professional eaters? Well, that cleanup crew is mostly made up of cells called macrophages. They are the garbage collectors, the vacuum cleaners of the body. They recognize all those eat-me signals, come over, gobble up the apoptotic bodies, and digest them completely. The result is a perfect, clean sweep. The dead cell is gone, its neighbors are totally unharmed, and there's zero inflammation. It's as if it was never even there.
So, as we've seen, apoptosis isn't just cell death. It's a fundamental process, really an elegant art of dying well on a cellular level. And that leaves us with this huge, fascinating question. If we could truly master this process, if we could learn how to turn it up to fight cancer, or maybe dial it down to prevent neurodegeneration, could mastering the art of dying well ultimately teach us how to live better, healthier, and maybe even longer lives? It's a huge question, and definitely something to think about. Thanks for diving in with me today.